Hello and welcome to Habit Nerd, a podcast show that knows that few things can have a more powerful impact on your life than improving your daily systems, habits, and mindset. I'm your host, Dr. Bree Hurn, a multi-passionate researcher, lecturer, speaker, and coach. Once a perfectionist who was always busy but not necessarily effective, I overcame illness and burnout and am now obsessed with sharing the science and systems for working with efficiency and habits for abundant health in your mind and your body. Each week, my guests and I share stories and lessons backed by research. So let's buckle up and dive straight into today's empowering conversation. An extremely exciting and accomplished guest today on Habit Nerd Podcast is Danny Kennedy, entrepreneur. Now, I came across Danny's work first years ago when he was the head trainer on the Kick app, the Keep It Cleaner app, and he still does that work, but he has a wildly successful podcast himself, which is called the Fitness and Lifestyle Podcast. He is also the co-founder of Unify Supplements. He is a fitness and mindset coach, and I know you are just going to get so much out of this conversation with Danny Kennedy. All right, so welcome to the Habit Nerd, Danny. Danny Kennedy from the Fitness and Lifestyle Podcast. A brief and I hope non-creepy fangirl moment from me is that my husband and I followed you for years and years now, actually. And I think where we came across your work in terms of an interest in fitness and nutrition, that's what got us there. But what has kept us there is how you've been able to integrate those teachings and those messages with sort of a mindset angle through your own solo episodes, but also all of the awesome guests that you've had on across the years. So yeah, just a huge thank you from me for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. And same back at you. Thanks so much for having me on. Really appreciate it. And also thanks for listening to the show and keeping up with my content as well. Very grateful. Thank you.
Of course. So let's jump into the questions. What I ask all of my guests, Danny, to start is there a habit that serves you and that helps you show up as the person that you're trying to be?
There is. There's multiple, but the one that comes to mind, you may have heard me do or speak about this or do this little exercise on my show before, but I want to kind of emphasize it for your listeners and viewers as well. So if I give you 10 seconds right now, and in that 10 seconds, I want you to look around the room that you're in, and I want you to count as many things that you can that are the color black.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
Go.
All right. My phone cover. I've got a folder. I've got a microphone and microphone stand. I've got a cord. I've got the thing that's attached to the window winder to bring the window in and out. And I've got a spine on a couple of books.
Perfect. All right, you can stop there. So collectively, how many did you count just then, roughly?
Maybe 6 or 7.
Okay, cool. Now, without looking again, when you were looking for those black things, how many things did you count that were red?
None.
Correct. So the reason I asked you that is to emphasize the fact that what we look for, we will always find evidence to support it. We'll always find things to support the thing that we're looking for, and that works both ways. And so coming back to answer the question you asked, one of the most simple yet effective habits that I feel like I do every single day is get really intentional about how I want to feel for the day, really intentional about what I want to get out of the day, and very intentional about the things that I'm trying to change. I think far too many people kind of go through their whole life almost on autopilot. And it's inevitable that we're going to develop limiting beliefs. It's inevitable that there's going to be things that happen that maybe, we didn't want to happen. But ultimately, when I speak to people or I speak to clients and I ask them what they want, they don't know, right? Either they don't know or they're unhappy with where they're at, whether it's what they've got or what they don't got, but not once have they ever declared what it is that they want. And so when we go through each day and each week and each month and each year, doing the same things, thinking the same things, reacting to the same things, spending time in the same environment, same energy, we can't expect anything to look any different. It's going to look like a replay, right? And so the very simple habit of deciding what it is that you want. And now this also comes into play, obviously, with the law of attraction. It's kind of like almost the first step to the law of attraction, declaring what you want and becoming very consciously and subconsciously aware of it. And so the way I explain it to people to really emphasize the intention, as I just did with that exercise, it's very similar to paid ads on Facebook or Instagram, right? You're putting your intention in Google or in an Instagram search bar or wherever. And now that you've decided what you want, similar to when you decide like you want to buy a certain car or a certain pair of sneakers, and all of a sudden you see it everywhere. It's always been there. You've just never been aware of it. You never decided that you want it. And so why would you be aware of it? So it's extremely powerful. Just like the paid ads, you decide what you want. Now you're seeing it everywhere, consciously, subconsciously. And if it genuinely means something to you, inevitably you're going to take action on it. And so if you think about accumulating 365 days of that every single year, not only awareness on what you want, but also the awareness on the things that went well, the things that, you could have done better, and what you can take away from it. To me, it's impossible not to see growth or not to see progress or for your life not to change when you're aware of it so often. And so, we're in early December now. And obviously over the last month or so, the conversations have started around New Year's resolutions and all the rest of it. And the thing is, most years people will set their New Year's resolutions on January 1st and look at them again on December 31st and wonder why nothing changed. Doesn't take a fucking rocket scientist to figure out why nothing's changed, right? Apologize for swearing.
No,
but having that intention, now imagine if every single day of the year you even just literally just visually looked at what those intentions were. Now it's a choice. Now you're choosing not to take action on it. Now it's something that you are consciously choosing to do. But when we're never aware of what we want, of course, nothing's going to change because you're just repeatedly doing the same things, expecting things to change without you changing. But that's just not how it works. Right? That's a long answer to a pretty simple question. But
no, I really appreciate you elaborating. So the exercise you took us through just then was a visual one. So, looking for the black things where I'm recording here. I'm reminded of Jim Quick, who I know you'd be across his work, is that idea of what you appreciate. So, you're looking for black things, and then all of a sudden, as you say, it's like your algorithm is set for black things throughout that whole day. What about the systems that help you do that? So we just did a visual exercise, and, something that aligns with me, in my work in linguistics as an academic is language. So, the power of language and, using words that I say to my little girls, actually, your words are your wand. So, what you put out there in terms of language is like a magic wand, and that will, which we're talking about exactly the same thing. But in terms of a habit like that you've been able to embed, which is obviously super powerful for you in multiple aspects of your life, what's the system that supports you to be able to do that? Is it a journaling practice? Is it something you do through meditation? Are you intentional in the morning about this is what I'm going to do today?
Yeah. Well, I'd say obviously morning routines have gained a lot of traction over the last year or two, and that's amazing. I think to an extent it's turned into more of like a
checklist.
People almost look at it as like a one size fits all, like, yeah, okay, this is trending at the moment, so I'm going to do these things because it sounds good and looks good, which is great if it works for you. The way that I articulate it to all of my clients is that I'm going to give you some ideas and you're going to try them out and you're going to see what works best for you. So I've found what works well for me, and what that looks like is straight out of bed, I'll go and jump in, have a regular shower, and then finish on complete cold. And look, there's so many physical benefits to cold exposure, of course, but for me, the mental outweighs the physical, meaning that when we are not thinking, when we're in a state of non-resistance, we're at our highest frequency, right? So think about all of the things, all the greatest moments of your life, and then try and think about, which bit sounds a bit counterproductive, but think about what you were thinking in that moment. And the answer is mostly nothing, right? And so if I get out of bed, I might have had a shit sleep, got a massive day, might not be in the greatest headspace, but I know as soon as I do the cold shower, all that's gone, right? Because you cannot think about anything else. Yeah, you can't think about anything else when the water's that cold and you got your body's kind of like doing something uncomfortable. So the cold shower for me is almost like the clean slate, and it's the tool to elevate my frequency before the day's even started. Because once you've done that, when we feel good, we tend to gravitate towards more good things. And so cold shower done. From there, I'll usually go and do my intentions and then I'll meditate. And so, meditation for me over the years has changed a lot in regards to my thought process around it.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, when I first started it, it was purely to just try and not think. It was
Mm.
like, okay, I want this bit of peace, right?
Quiet
And
your
I think that
mind.
can be a great tool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas over the years, just through learning from different people, from experiencing different forms of meditation, I now look at it as my chance to create. And so I've set that intention. I go into my meditation with the intent of bringing my awareness and focus to what it is that I'm trying to attract,
Mm-hmm.
and genuinely trying to feel the emotions of it being done. So almost putting myself in the position of it already being a reality, because
Mm-hmm.
I guess the part two of the whole intention side of things that has allowed me, in my opinion, to see the most amount of growth
Mm-hmm.
is truly embodying the version of me that would already have it,
Mm-hmm.
whatever outcome it is. So if it's business, you might be year one in your business, but you're showing up as if you're in year 10, doing the same things that you would need to do if it was the way you wanted it to be, because that's the only thing that makes sense. You got to ask yourself the question, doing what I'm doing now, feeling how I'm feeling, speaking how I'm speaking, does that match with the outcome I'm saying I want?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have to shift away from waiting for something before we change. It doesn't work like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I was chatting with a client the other day about the term metaphysical,
Mm-hmm.
right? Around like having the thought and the emotion, and
Mm-hmm.
then the byproduct, or it materializes as what we experience in reality. But I think, and I definitely was this way, a lot of people have it the wrong way around. They think that the material thing is then going to bring the feeling, but it's not. And so,
Mm-hmm.
if even with an example of, let's say, money, if someone really struggles with money and you ask them what their beliefs are around money,
Mm-hmm.
chances are they'd be quite, poor or negative beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And they would probably say it's because they've never really had money.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is they've never really had money because their beliefs around money are poor and low frequency and negative.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, for me, it's usually the cold shower, set some intentions, and meditate. The duration of the meditation will change depending on how much time I've got. But for myself, I look at that as my anchors, and it doesn't matter where I am, doesn't matter how I feel, what the weather's like, what I'm doing. Every day starts like that. And so now I'm going into my day with intention, obviously, but ideally at the back end of the meditation, if I've been able to feel any of the emotions that are attached to what I'm saying that I want to create as my reality,
Mm-hmm.
then realistically, I'm leaving that meditation as the version of myself that's got it, because there is no, like, the body doesn't know the difference between thought and reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I start my day like that, theoretically, as I go throughout my day, I would hope that I'm responding and not reacting, meaning that I'm more intentional about how I carry myself throughout every scenario through the day. Whereas if I don't do it, I tend to be a lot more reactive, fall back into old patterns, react to things instead of just responding, and so for myself, it's a non-negotiable. That's how I start the
Mm-hmm.
day. Now, does it work do I have the perfect day every day? Of course not.
Mm-hmm.
It's inevitable that you're still going to have things that don't go the way that you want them to go, but at least I'm not leaving it to chance. And at
Mm-hmm.
least I almost look at it like a mental rehearsal. Like the word meditation itself, one of its definitions is to become familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like every day, every morning, if we become familiar with the version of ourselves we want to be, then you'd think, just like anything else, the more you practice that, the better you'll get at it, to the point where that is your natural state. And so now it makes sense that you're going to attract these things, because you're not waiting for anything anymore. So instead of saying, all right, in 12 weeks' time, when I've lost 5 kilos of body fat, I'm going to feel so confident, I'm going to be more outgoing, I'm going to start taking all the other parts of my health seriously. Why don't we just do that from week one? So now we're
Mm-hmm.
not waiting for anything. And now it's inevitable that you're going to see the result, because you would have to be doing that to maintain it anyway.
Mm.
And so
It's
it's
a
almost removing the waiting part of the process, which people tend to spend most of their life waiting.
mm.
And you see it all the time. You see it all the time, where when the time comes and the thing happens, you're still the same person, and it doesn't feel the way you thought it would, because you're still you. You've just now accumulated something else into your life which hasn't changed how you thought you'd feel.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you for reframing meditation for us and giving it that angle of the creativity. I think that's really powerful. Also, the cold shower, which, I think probably most people are about, the physical benefits of it and kind of the adrenaline rush that you get when you get out and the energy, and that's all fine, as you say.
Mhm.
But it's that you're on the front foot, and even if that's all you achieve, you've done the hardest thing. You've proved to yourself that you've done something really difficult, and you're already,
Mhm.
your self-esteem's heightened, and you're able to take on the day with a little bit more kind of vigor.
Of
Even if
course.
things didn't, sort of like that reach for the moon and you'll fall amongst the stars kind of idea. Like it's, yeah,
Mm.
you're really leading yourself and leading your day with those small systems. So yeah, thanks, Danny.
Yeah.
That's yeah, and I really appreciate that you're able to, instead of just say, look, I have a cold shower and I meditate, you've obviously done some really deep introspection about the why behind those things. And they're really good examples for the audience and for me about an umbrella habit that serves you in a whole range of different ways across, regardless of what your day holds, whether you're
Mm.
coaching clients or whether it's, spending time with your family or whether there's something difficult you need to undertake that day. It's sort of the umbrella habit about your intention and the way you'll lead yourself throughout the day. So yeah, really appreciate it. I feel
Pleasure.
like there may not be one, but is there a habit that you're at the moment feel like isn't aligned with that person that you're trying to be?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes and no. Like at the moment, obviously, I'm trying to be quite intentional about removing any of the things that aren't aligned. And I think,
Mm,
on that note, that's what I believe personal development is. It's a process of elimination. And
mm,
so, I'd be crazy to say that there isn't anything. But in terms of what I'm intentionally doing, I'm really making the effort to make sure that it is aligned. And I think that is the beauty of deciding how it is that you want to feel or what it is you want to experience, because now it becomes very black and white.
mm,
There is no now you can't blame anyone. It's like, okay,
mm,
this decision either aligns with how I want to feel or it doesn't.
mm,
So I can still choose to do it, but I'm responsible for that. And I think that is usually the best place to start. Or not even to start, just something that needs awareness as
mm,
often as possible, whether
mm,
it's certain beliefs that aren't serving you, whether
mm,
it's certain habits, certain people, which is a massive one, environments, jobs.
mm,
Like, I think with personal development, personal growth, whatever you want to fucking categorize it as, right?
mm,
The first thing that people do with most things is to look at what we can add in. Like, what's the
mm.
thing that I'm not doing, or what can I add in that no one else, that all these other people are doing that I don't do yet,
Yeah,
that's
what
going to
action
change
can
my
I
life?
take? Yeah.
Yeah, but 99% of the time, it's the opposite. It's like,
Mm,
let's start with removing all the shit that does not match what you're saying that you want or how you want
mm,
to feel. Because you can add in all you want, but if these things are still there, the
mm,
outcome's not going to change.
mm.
It's like pulling in two different directions,
Yeah.
and so, and that can be the hardest bit, right? Because typically these things are familiar, they're comfortable, or they're just part of what you believe is your identity.
Mm,
And so removing them is going to feel uncomfortable. It's inevitable. And, if we bring it back to, say, the cold shower, you brought some good points up. Like, that's most likely the hardest thing you'll have to do for the day, hopefully, on most
mhm,
days.
mhm,
So all the other things become a little easier. And as you said, it's a feeling of accomplishment. And you've done something hard when you didn't want to do it.
mm.
Like, I love the cold shower, but I'll be honest, there's most
You don't look
days I'm
forward to
not that
it.
G'd up to turn it to cold. Yeah, and
Yeah.
particularly in Melbourne when it's freezing cold. So
Yeah.
um, I think for myself, it's about, I kind of look at like where my frequency is at right now.
Mm, mhm,
Refer to that however you want. Just how am I feeling? Because I'm a big believer in the fact that the state that we're in will determine our perception of everything.
mm,
And so if you're really trying to look at what needs to be removed or what's not aligned, just follow the good feeling, right? As
mm,
in, okay, this makes me not feel good. Okay,
mm,
maybe we should do less of this. This makes me
mm,
feel good. Let's do more of that. And so it almost becomes a game of like, how can I keep my frequency up as
mm.
often as possible? And so even with those habits we mentioned before, they're habits that have a lot of benefits, but they're also tools. As I said to you before with the cold shower, I don't want to keep talking about it too long, but the
No.
cold shower, I'll ask you this question. Well, I've kind of already answered it. Hey, but anyway, think about the things that make you feel good, right?
Hmm.
Any examples for yourself? If I use examples for myself, it'd be having conversations like this. It'd
Hmm.
be, traveling, spending time with my fiance,
Hmm.
um, training, right?
Yeah.
Like exercising, doing challenging things, cold showers, all that type
Hmm.
of stuff. And again, in all of those things, we're just not thinking, which is why it feels so good.
Mm.
When you train or when people talk about the runner's high, it's because you have not been thinking about your problems or the things that are causing you stress and anxiety. And when those things are removed, the feeling is very good. And so we can start to look at the things that we do each day as tools,
Mm.
right? If you bring it all the way back to the surface of what I just said, this is just my opinion that the state we're in will determine our perception of every experience. And so you could do the same thing 2 days in a row and have a vastly different experience based
Mm.
off what headspace you're in.
Yeah.
And so once we know that, it becomes less about what we're doing a lot of the time and becomes more about how we're feeling first. Because you could give two people the same strategy and they could follow it to an absolute T and get vastly different results based off what state they were in when they were doing it.
I really like your analogy that I've heard you use before, Danny, about it being your birthday. So, it could be 11 a.m. on your birthday. You could be doing exactly the same thing, sitting at your computer at work or in a meeting or whatever. And then 11 a.m. the next day, your frequency is at a completely different,
Mm,
setting. And, most of us like our birthday because it's an opportunity to, spend time with family and friends and get messages and, be reminded of the people that love you, etc. So you're naturally, kind of vibing at a higher frequency. So that's such a great example. I would also argue that saying the same thing as you are, just maybe in a different way, when you are doing things that you love, you've just talked about spending time with your fiance or, conversations that light you up or being in the gym and training, using your body in a way that feels productive to you. It's because you are closest to the sort of person that you want to be, like it is in
mm,
aligning with. So when you're not doing that, so when you skip a training day or when you skip a few training days, it's because there's a departure from the person that you identify with and you feel less like
mm.
yourself. So it kind of
Yeah, I
goes
love that.
from the awareness for me goes back to that meditation idea of sort of to be familiar with. So to be most like yourself is where you are, most lit up. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's really great.
Can I put it back on? I'll put it back on you for a second. What you asked me the question around the habit that I'm
Mhm.
focusing on at the moment that allows me to, make the most growth or feel at that highest frequency. What is it for you?
So mine is I'm in an unusual space at the moment for myself where as someone experiencing my career of choice and, I've kind of got that eldest daughter tendencies, a bit of perfectionism. The tendency for me to be really good at something is a little bit problematic in my life because I've started this podcast and, a way to impact people in a different way. The tendency that I'm trying to work on, but have it being kind of a settled tendency is consistency. And it's just putting
Hmm.
in the small reps and being okay with myself or, having some self compassion when I don't do a great job because it's
Yep.
putting myself into and it's interesting because I would like to align with the identity of somebody who takes risks, but yet my behavior doesn't necessarily exhibit that. So this for me
Hmm.
is just, as a podcast, we happen to be talking on this podcast today. So I'll use this as an example, is something that I've put out there. I'm not 100% happy with my performance yet, but I know that I'm getting closer to somewhere that I want to be and to be the sort of person that I want to show up as in impacting people in a positive way and,
Mm.
being of service and these sorts of things. So for me, it's an awareness of, okay, that doesn't feel good, but we are going in the right direction. And it's sort of like,
Yeah.
I can't remember, there was an American businessman who said, how would the person I'm trying to be do the thing I'm about to do? And that's what it is.
Correct.
I'm trying to be somebody who shows up with consistency and takes risks and understands that you're not going to be perfect on the first go, but that you're getting closer and closer each time. So that for
Hmm.
me is, a habit or a tendency or a behavior that I'm working on. And for me, I also think that's going to show up in kind of multiple aspects of my life in a positive way. That's certainly the goal.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. there's two things I want to share with you off the back of that, if that's
Mm-hmm.
cool. So, a little analogy that I've found really helpful. And if I look back at my podcast, my PT business, my online business, my, more of the mindset stuff now, basically everything that I've ever done
Mm-hmm.
is you almost want to think of it like a damn wall, right? You
Mm-hmm.
might have heard me say this before.
Yeah, but I
If
think
we're
the
on the
listeners will
outside of
appreciate
the,
it. Yeah.
yeah, so if we're on the outside of a damn wall and we're showing up every day or every week and continually investing into podcast, business, relationship, money, body, whatever it is, the water on the other side of the dam wall is gradually rising every
Mm-hmm.
single time we make that investment and that deposit
Mm-hmm.
into ourselves or whatever it is. It's
Mm-hmm.
rising, but on the outside, it looks like fuck all's happening,
Mm-hmm.
right? It looks like nothing's happening, and so the most common response to that is, it's not working,
Give
and
up.
this is not it. So I leave. And so if we continue making those investments, inevitably the water is either going to overflow or break through the wall. And it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be when you usually least expect it.
Yeah.
But then the feeling is like, oh my God, this has all been paying off. I thought nothing was happening, but it has been. And so I think showing it, like being able to continually show up like that, and as you said, embody the version of you that you're saying that you want to become. But the
Mm-hmm.
second part of it that I found really, really helpful, particularly when you feel like there's an area of your life that you are either an authority or you've excelled at a certain area, and then
Mm-hmm.
you go and do something different. That's like there's almost this random expectation for it to come and meet the level that you're
That's
already
right.
at, but it's not true. And so if I said to you right now that I'm going to come past your house, pick you up, and we're going to go to a skate park this afternoon, right? And I'm going to give you a skateboard, and I want you to drop into the half pipe or whatever and start doing some tricks and just see how you go.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that you would be good at skateboarding?
I definitely don't. But you know what's interesting about that? I have no desire to skateboard. So for me,
Mhm.
it's about, I think that things are put on your heart for a reason. Like I don't want to be a pole
Mhm.
vaulter. So I have no interest in learning to pole vault. I know I'd be terrible at pole vaulting. So that's not on my heart. I don't want to do that. I do want
Mhm.
to host a podcast because I think that that's important work that aligns with the sort of person that I want to be. So
Yep.
for me, I completely take the point that I would be no good if you took me to a skate ramp right now and skateboarded. But for the challenge I face in my own, mental psyche here is that if there's something that I want to be good at because it's important to me to do, I want to be
Mhm.
good at it sooner than I am. And that's an awareness
Yep.
that I have about myself.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And the approach I've taken with that exact thought process, because before I didn't use this approach and it really got to me. I constantly found myself in overwhelm. I constantly found myself second guessing myself, and I found myself just going in a million different directions trying to find the right approach, right? The thing that changed it for me was that I'll use the example of our supplement business. We launched not even 12 months ago.
Uh-huh.
E-commerce, not something that I'm super familiar with, or I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't. And so I felt that feeling almost that you feel around the podcast. It was like, this is perfectly organic with my audience. It's a product I believe in. We've put so
Mm,
much work into it. This is going to be great.
mm,
And when it didn't grow as quickly, which I don't know why I had the illusion that it was going to, you
yeah.
start having that overwhelm or the second guessing and the doubting. But what changed it for me is that if I said to you that in 2 years' time, I promise you that your podcast will be reaching thousands, if not millions of people. You will
Mm-hmm.
feel the level of alignment and confidence and the skill set and the authority that you're desiring right now. But it's
Mm-hmm.
going to take 2 years. But it's a
Mm-hmm.
guarantee. It's just at
Yeah.
the back end of the 2 years.
Yeah.
You would get to the end of year one and be like, fuck yeah, I'm on track. This is awesome. I'm so proud of the growth that I've made. And there's a feeling of anticipation,
Yes.
right? There's an anticipation of a knowing that the outcome or the thing that you desire, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so by thinking of it like that, what it allowed me to do, and it might be different for you, but for myself, it gave me the license to be shit. It gave me the license to show up and remove an expectation of me doing something and seeing an instant outcome from the thing that I did. Because in the back of my mind, it was like, okay, the more reps I get in, the more time that goes by, the closer I am to this guaranteed result, even if it's fabricated in your own head.
Yeah.
And so, as I said, you don't tend to look at what you may look at now as a failure or a weakness.
Mm.
You look at it as something that you've already made significant growth on
Mm.
in a period of time that realistically is quicker than what you're expecting because you said 2 years. And so now it gets to 12 months in and you're like, fuck, I'm crushing it. I'm actually closer than what I thought I was going to be. But if you came into it with the approach of being good straight away or feeling like there was a need to be at that level straight away because you
Mm.
desire it,
Mm.
the feeling's very different. It's almost disappointment of like, shit, this is harder than what I thought, or I'm
Yeah.
not where I want to be yet. And so
Yeah.
that's allowed me to attack things and detach from the actual instant outcome and sit in and knowing that like I just have to keep showing up and making these gradual investments. And in time, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yeah. That's so helpful. Really, really helpful. I think it for me goes back to that anticipatory excitement about something is a much kind of higher self vibe to operate in. So it's almost like when you've done that meditation and you visualize your success and a really great day, you come out of it feeling excited. So to reframe it like that, to think of, if I was to write in my calendar, what's the date today? The 4th of December we're recording. So 4th of December in 2026, I've got this many million downloads and that's guaranteed. All of a sudden, it's like I can feel a buzz and I can feel an excitement and
Yeah.
and I think giving that yourself the permission to not be great at it's really sound advice. It's certainly advice I would give if somebody asked me if they were starting something. It's just about that awareness of leading yourself in the way that you would, give somebody else that same compassion. So yeah, I
Yeah.
really appreciate the reframe. Thank you. That's awesome. And I'll remember it. I
Just,
almost feel like I need to put a note in my calendar for 4th of December 2026 and check back in.
yes, please do. I think just with that as well, though, is what comes with that and what I have found has been quite effective for myself, and I believe it will be for you too, is articulating the vulnerability around that to your
Mm.
audience.
Mm.
As you just said, being able to give that advice to someone else is very
Mm.
easy.
Mm.
But you know how much better it feels in that on, December 4th, 3rd,
4th.
whatever
Yeah.
today is, December 4th,
4th.
2026, when you get there and your audience has watched and listened to you go from, hey,
Mm.
there's this thing and this is what I'm feeling. There's a desire for this and it doesn't feel comfortable at the moment, but I'm going to
Mm.
show you and document the fact that I'm going to continue to show up and take you guys on the journey with me. And you
Mm.
get 2 years down the track and you can look back and go, fuck yeah, like one, I did it. But secondly, I've also empowered everyone else who feels the same and would usually give up because they're looking at me and just thinking, oh, well, this just happened overnight and they're just good at this. But that's
Mm.
not the case.
Yeah.
And so the more vulnerability, the more openness, which is something that I've gone out of my way to show through podcast, email, socials, is like, an example was 18 months ago, I launched my first mastermind for personal development.
Yes.
A 4-week mastermind. I promoted the shit out of it for a month
Yes.
and I had zero signups,
Sign-ups. Yeah. Wow.
zero. And I was battling the decision of do I just brush it under the rug, pretend that
Mm.
it's all sweet, and then do
Mm.
another one in a month or two and just act like it was full.
Yes.
But instead, I went with the option of posting on social media and telling the exact story. Look, just launched my first mastermind. I'm so excited. I know I've got so much to offer in terms of my experiences, and hopefully that adds value. But I got zero signups.
Mm.
And this is what I'm going to do next. I'm going to show up to the next one, regardless of how many signups I get, and show up to each and every single call and each and every single lesson or whatever, as if there's 1,000 people in the program. And I want you guys to watch how much quicker this business grows when I show up like that and stop
Mm.
reacting to what's right in front of me. Now, I didn't say I was going to be great at it, but I said I'm going to show up as if I already was. And the level of growth that I inevitably then had in the following 12 months almost doesn't make sense. Like it wasn't like it was breaking any world records, but like if I had continued to stay in that frequency that I was in after the first one of like,
Yes.
shit, maybe this is not it. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
not as good at this. Yeah. Or maybe they don't want this, but
Or made that
instead I
mean
just
something
shifted.
about you as, you as
Correct. Yeah.
yourself. Yeah. Yeah, that is amazing. And just to confirm that story for you, every time I've recorded an episode and then walked into the kitchen and said to my husband, that was crap, I've got to do that again. I'm not happy with it, or I've listened back to it. And he has said, Bree, remember Danny Kennedy said he showed up every episode. He wasn't happy with it at the start. Your quality wasn't as where you wanted it to be. You were, and look at you now all these years down the track. So you as an individual, I mean, my story is one story, but I can only imagine that there would be thousands in any aspect of your work. And for me, it was a podcast, but obviously your audience, it's things like the mastermind where you're putting your time and energy and effort into something and it's not working. It'd be so easy. And most people would say, all right, well, that's not for me. I gave it a go, on to the next thing. But instead, you really reframed it into, how do I want to feel with this? And I'm going to assume that there's 1,000 signups and act from that methodology. I use that with, I'm a university lecturer, and my students, I often say to them, don't ever compare your first go at a chapter of your thesis to somebody's published book, because it's just
Correct.
there. Yeah. You cannot compare the two. So, that's
And do you think, like, if I ask you this, do you feel like your audience, let's say over a 12-month period, like I would imagine your intention, as you said before, is to try and add value and improve people's lives through this podcast. Like that would be the overarching purpose of the show, I would imagine.
Hoping so, yes.
And so how do you think the level of value differs from doing exactly what we just spoke about, showing up, being vulnerable about it, bringing people on the journey, allowing people to see the bits that we don't usually get to see on the final product or the finished book, as you referred to it as.
Yes.
If people got to see you write every single chapter, the amount of value that they were able to gain from experiencing that and knowing that what they're feeling is what you felt because you've documented it, the amount of value and impact that you can have off that far outweighs the final product of the book, in my opinion.
I agree. As somebody who sat in the shoes at the moment of somebody who is vulnerable and bumbling their way through, that is absolutely what I need to see other people do. So I promise, show up with vulnerability and be honest, about that. The thing
Amazing.
that's interesting though with this podcast space when you launch, and I only launched on Monday, so 2 days ago, is the idea that you have to.
Well, you're already very good, by the way.
Thank you.
You're about where I was. Oh, you're practically where I am right now.
Oh,
You've done basically 1 or 2 episodes in terms of speaking. Like you can go back and listen to the first 100, 200 episodes of my show, and they were nowhere near the extent or the level of the conversation we're having right now.
okay.
And so I think that in itself is a massive, massive win.
Oh, thank you.
And so, I mean, yeah.
Thank you for saying that.
Seeing where it's at.
Oh, I appreciate it. But what was I saying? Yeah, no, just this idea that like with analytics and being able to get listens and runs on the board, you need to, seek reviews from people and that sort of thing. And it's very vulnerable for me to ask family and friends to support something that for me doesn't feel where it needs to be. So that in itself, I'm hoping is going to be a big personal growth challenge for me to sit in the discomfort of this is not the work that you're used to seeing from me, yet I want you to support me because it's important to me that I grow in a way that's small steps. And as you say, articulate that to people who are watching and who are feeling similar in whatever area of their own life it is where they feel like they're not making the progress that they would like to. So yeah, it's an opportunity for me to show up as the leader that, that I want to be for my audience. So yeah, so thanks, Danny. Thanks so much for articulating that in a way that, I feel like I'm having a bit of a private coaching session here. I should probably you should invoice me after this.
Oh, don't be silly. But I was going to say just then, like that in itself is also an assumption though, like how many people out of your close circle have a podcast?
Yeah, zero.
So already they're looking at what you're doing, regardless of what you think the final product looks like at the moment. They're already looking at what you're doing as something that is a massive achievement in itself. It's an authority. You're seen as an authority, regardless of how well you think the podcast is yet. Because again, that's That's just your perception and your
Perception.
assumption.
Yeah.
We don't know, like there could be, someone within your circle or a random could be listening to this with no idea that you've just launched the podcast. But we're so aware of it that, as I said at the start of the call, we're now looking for things to support.
That's the
fact
energy
that
I'm
we feel
bringing
that
to
way.
it. Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking for the evidence of that. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really helpful. Yeah, I'll remember it. You're really calling me out on some of my rubbish, Danny. I appreciate it. Just a couple more questions if you've still got time, if that's all right. So we know, and your audience knows you as a really well-respected fitness trainer, and you do that work both in the gym and online as a coach. So the principles that you would lead your clients with around weight loss or, building strength or, strength gain are broadly similar, I would imagine. The principles are broadly similar. I know you'd contextualize it to individuals from where they're starting and that sort of thing. So if those principles are broadly similar around nutrition and training, for example, what is it that sets your most successful clients apart? So the ones that do really well, what have they got in place?
I think what those clients have in place is, initially, the ability to sit in the discomfort of change, because 99% of the clients that come to me have been doing something that hasn't worked.
Yes.
And so for them to then change that is going to feel uncomfortable and awkward and not right, because it's not familiar. So that initial ability to let go of what they've done or let go of the old story, whether it's diets don't work for me, this program doesn't do this doesn't do that, or bad genetics, whatever, let go of the story first. But secondly, the ability to look at it as a lifelong change and not a short-term fix, not a band-aid.
Right.
So I talk a lot about shifting away from an on or off switch and more to a volume dial.
Okay.
And so the principles that I use with nutrition, with training, as you mentioned, the foundations and the principles are the same for everyone, regardless of whether it's an athlete, someone that's just come in that wants to lose some weight, a mom, a dad, and whatever. It's all the same principles, right? The actual specifics of it can be different, but the overarching foundations are the same. And so the buy-in, or the ability to do really well, first comes from the buy-in of change, but second comes in, okay, similar to our conversation around embodiment, I need to make this into something that's just part of who I am. And so a client that comes to mind who, when he started with me about 4 months ago, he has a highly time-consuming job, high responsibility job, family, all the rest of it. And when he came to me, he had tried over and over and over again to get in what he believed was the shape he wanted to be in. And every single one of those approaches was a short-term fix. And it was something that from day one, he had no intention of sticking to longer than that program went. And so when we started, he was training about, I want to say 2 to 3 times maximum per week. And if you fast forward to now, he's training 5 to 6 times a week. But the level of discipline that it requires for him to train 5 or 6 times per week now is less than what it required for him to go 2 or 3 times at the beginning.
Right.
And there's a few reasons why. One, we gradually built it up to 5 or 6 times a week. But 2, he made it just part of who he was. He made it part of his day, part of his lifestyle. And we didn't try and implement anything that he couldn't see himself doing longer than the time that we're working together. And so at the start, it was like, okay, I'm just going to go 2 or 3 times, because if I go 2 or 3 times, hopefully it gets me closer to my result. Now the result is just the byproduct of who he's being.
Yes.
And so with that, one of the biggest focus points for myself and my clients is, does this approach that we're about to start, does it align? Does it fit in with your lifestyle, or do you have to fit? Does it fit with your lifestyle? And it should, because it shouldn't be the opposite way around. You should not have to change your lifestyle in order to follow a training or nutrition principle, because from day one, it's never something that you're going to stick to, and we will always revert back to what is normal. And so, as you would probably know, consuming my content, like, I don't believe there's any guesswork in changing your body composition or being in phenomenal shape. Right? There's some basic things that are much easier than what people are led to believe, that once you understand them, you're set. You get to choose now what the results are. You get to but it doesn't mean that it's not this or that.
Yes.
It's this and that.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
the life
This
and
alongside
the
that.
outcome.
Yes. Yes.
Correct. That's probably a better way to articulate it. Yeah. And so I think that's the one. They're the type of clients that do really, really well. Whereas when I have someone come in that wants the result yesterday, it's very hard to get the buy-in of long-term progress and like a sustainable approach that it's not, we don't just have in mind the date in 8 weeks time. And after that, we don't care what else happens.
Yes.
Right. Because anyone can walk in off the street and help someone lose weight in a 4 week period, a shitload of weight in a 4 week
Yes.
period.
Yes.
Does that equate to results that last? No. Is it an approach that is going to be enjoyable? No. Do we want to lose weight? No, we want to lose fat. And so there's obviously more to it than just training a lot and eating next to nothing, obviously.
Yes.
But I think the important part is that I say to every single client that I'm working with that's trying to lose fat and build muscle, but predominantly trying to lose fat, it should almost feel too easy. It should almost feel like there's always going to be a part of us, because this is how we're hardwired, I believe. There's a part of us that believe that unless we suffer, we shouldn't get a reward.
Yes. Yes.
But it doesn't have to be like that.
No. And that's a limiting belief, I think, that shows up in multiple aspects of life, isn't it? You can't make money unless you work, 15-hour days. You can't lose weight unless you smash yourself in the gym. You can't, so it, and I would imagine, for fitness trainers like yourself to be able to sleep at night, you want to be able to embed these principles into somebody so that when they leave their work with you, they can continue that they're not reliant on you as a mentor, as a coach, holding their hand through it so that it's sustainable. So is it for you as a coach, like James Clear talks about, helping them, I'm the sort of person who does this, instead of I go to the gym 3 times a week, I'm the sort of person who values exercise for these sorts of reasons, or, I'm the sort of person who eats with intention, to fuel my body, etc. And that way, I would imagine your clients who do well, if they miss a day or 2 days, it doesn't actually matter, because they're the sort of person who will go back on day 3.
100% spot on. And part of that that's really important is the massive focus on removing a need or a desire for perfection. So one of the first things I say to clients around nutrition in particular is that I do not want perfection. I'm not asking for perfection. I don't want you to try and strive for perfection. I want you to be close enough. Because this is probably more detailed around the nutrition side, but a day, like if we think about a 30-day period and 25 of those days are just absolute shit, and then 5 days where you're really good with your nutrition and your training, you would not expect to look great at the end of the 30 days.
No.
But for some unknown reason, we can have the opposite, where there's 25 great days and there's 5 average ones. And now all of a sudden we're losing our mind thinking we've got to start again and it's not going to work.
Yeah.
When you have this intention, the same as anything else, like regardless of whether it's with this example or whether it's any other example in your life, when you set the intention of perfection, you will be consistently disappointed, and you're going to have this negative feedback loop that just repeats itself. And so when you strive for perfection with nutrition, for example, that might look like following this ridiculously difficult nutritional approach that you can do for 5 or 6 days, and then you just reach a breaking point, have a day where you just binge and do whatever, and then you start again. And so it's stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. But in your mind, you're consistently failing.
Yeah.
Consistently failing with the intention you set for yourself. And so, as you just said, one of the first things that I go over with the client around the intention of what results they want to get is similar to the process of the meditation. I get them to visualize what it looks like, feels like, having it already being done. And I ask them the question, if you were to wake up tomorrow morning and the outcome that you just told me you want was already reality, who would you have to be? What would your days look like? How would you feel about going to training? How would you feel about nutrition? How would you feel if you missed a day but you're already in shape? Who would you surround yourself with? What are the things you wouldn't really consume or you wouldn't have part of your life anymore? And if you can do that from day one, as I said, it's inevitable, because now when you miss a session, if you're in the best shape of your life and you missed a session, you wouldn't be sitting there going, fuck, we've got to start again.
That's
I've just
right.
failed and I've just, oh, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time. You'd be
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I'll go tomorrow
Tomorrow's a new
or I'll
day.
go to my next one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you can feel like that from day one, coming back to the start of this chat, you're not waiting for anything. You're not consistently beating yourself up about not doing what you're meant to do.
Mm.
And more importantly, you feel good. And so the same as anything else, that flows over to everything else you're doing. So now you're getting this constant reaffirming of like, I'm exactly where I need to be.
Mm.
It's the who, it's not the what.
Yeah, absolutely. That is, yeah, super powerful. Super powerful. Thanks, Danny. It's
My
kind of
pleasure.
that idea that we can't have an all or nothing mentality. And the other thing that I struggle with in terms of goal setting is I know there is one approach that people say things like, say you want to lose weight, write down the weight that you want to be. Or, if there's a bench press kilo that you want to get to, write that down. I subscribe more so to start feeling like the person, as you say, who's going to get to that anyway. And it just takes the pressure off that number, because you might get there or you might not, but it actually doesn't matter, because
Mm-hmm.
if you don't get there by your 6 week benchmark, for example, your Dan Wall analogy, just before you get there is often the time when we give up. So, when you just with Dan Wall's
Yeah.
about to break, often that's where it feels like, oh my God, I've put in so much hard work. If you just hold on, you might get there in 6.5 weeks, or you might get there in 8 weeks, but you're a new identity, you're embodying a new kind of way of being rather than doing, as you say. So, yeah, that's amazing. I really want to
It
remind
comes back to the
people.
feeling.
Go, Danny. Sorry.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
It comes back to the feeling. Like I said to a client yesterday, they've had a really good month, very consistent,
Mm-hmm.
consistently ticking the boxes every day. Their progress photos look great. They told me on the call yesterday that they've been getting compliments about how they're looking, their clothes are fitting better.
Mm-hmm.
But then the conversation then goes to the number on the scale. And
Mm.
so I said to them, of those people that gave you a compliment, how many of them asked you how much you weigh when they gave you the compliment? And they were like, oh, obviously none of them. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's say you got down to the number that you set out to achieve, but you didn't look the way you thought you were going to look. Would you still be happy because you hit the number? Of course, the answer is no. So, particularly with body composition, the number on the scale is largely irrelevant unless I have someone who needs to lose a significant amount of weight,
Mm-hmm.
where the projection of the scale weight should and hopefully is consistently coming down.
Mm-hmm.
If you're someone who is training effectively, has good training experience, if your muscle tissue is coming up and body fat's going down, the scale will tell zero story. It'll tell a story of no results.
Yes.
But then you go and look at yourself in the mirror, or you put your clothes on and it's night and day. But more importantly, you feel good. Yeah. Because how many people have had a great week in the gym, great week with their food, feeling awesome, step on the scale, walk away disappointed. You felt good.
Yeah.
And the only thing that made you not feel good is this stupid number.
Yeah. You just sabotage yourself. I really want to remind people that if my listeners are new to your work, that, to go back and listen to your podcast, to listen to the actual, individual episodes you've done on nutrition or on, progressive load or whatever it is that's of interest, so that they can hear a deep dive into some of the things that I know we're just kind of touching the surface on in our chat today, because I know they'll gain huge amount of value from that. Our last question. So you're multi-passionate, you're engaged in, lots of different aspects of, your own businesses and obviously your life. Can you just talk about how you manage that juggle?
Yeah, well, it didn't used to be very well, but is gradually improved. I think part of the reason of it improving, or there's a couple, but the first one was learning to kind of let go of certain things that I'd probably just wrapped around my identity, which has probably happened a few times, to be honest. So things that were no longer serving me the way they once were, but I was holding on to because of the amount of time and effort that had gone into those things, but they were just no longer serving me. So letting go of some of those things. But I think the biggest one, I don't necessarily love when people use the word certain hacks, but this was a great hack for me.
Yeah.
And so in the past, because I've kind of always just thrived off chaos in a sense, as in like
Right.
shit being like just constantly flat out. Like that's where I feel like I operate
Most
best. But
alive.
that
Yes.
was also just what I just turned into normal, and it wasn't actually that effective, to be
Right.
honest. And so
Yeah.
with my business coach about 12 months ago, he just asked a simple question. He's like, "Can I see your calendar?" And on my phone, I showed him, and he was like, what the fuck is this? Basically,
Yeah.
after we'd been talking about how much shit I was doing. And so
Uh-huh.
from that day onwards, I downloaded the Google Calendar app,
Hmm.
and I went in and started scheduling every part of my day
Hmm.
to as much to the extent of scheduling time to do nothing,
Mm.
scheduling time to
Rest
meditate,
time. Yeah.
scheduling time to eat,
Hmm.
and color coded them. And
Yeah.
so what I found when I did this is that I didn't do it because I had the intention of being, military grade discipline of
No.
exact second of every day,
Yes.
but I did it because I do consistently have a fair bit of stuff that I'm juggling. And
Yes.
when I try and do it all at once, it's overwhelming and not
Yes.
much of it gets done. And so
Yes.
now when I open up my phone, no matter how much I've got on, in that moment, there's only one thing that I need to be doing, and
Hmm.
everything else has been accounted for. And so my email inbox could be flooded, and it could be 9 in the morning, and I want to go and respond to it all,
Yeah.
but I've scheduled for
It's
3 o'clock
not time
to
for
four
that.
o'clock to do
Check your
emails. And
emails.
so
Yeah.
I can detach from that, which has allowed me to become a hell of a lot more present. Productivity's gone through the roof, but I also realized that as busy as I feel like I still am, I was
Mm.
back then busy being busy, not
Yeah.
being productive.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I've actually probably found that the ability to get time back is a bit easier now. Not that I'm doing anything any less. If not, if anything, I'm probably doing more than what I was before, but
Mm-hmm.
doing it in a way where this is all I'm focused on right now. Obviously, I'm doing a podcast and that's all I'm doing.
Yes.
But after this, there'll be something else and that's all I'm doing. And so your ability to really be productive, be present, and to not carry things with you for the whole day and your mind just be like just a whirlwind has
Chaos.
has really changed for me.
Yeah.
It's been massive, and so now it's up to me, right? Like on a weekend, just mapping out the week and going, what is of the highest priority? Where do I want to
Mm.
place these things? And
Mm.
then the other benefit of this is that you remove decision fatigue.
Yeah.
So I wake up in the morning and it's just execute, not
Yeah.
sit there and go, okay, how are we going to get through all this shit today? It's
What's
just
the
like,
best use of
okay,
my, yeah,
let's
what's the
go.
best use of my time right now? And you've got 15 things and then you have to decide which one it is. And yeah, and then feel guilty
Yeah,
about the 11 things you
exactly.
haven't done. Yeah, that's so,
Yeah.
it's so powerful. And the other element to that, that I'm sure you understand, but I'll just articulate it for the sake of listeners, is that by doing one thing, so for example, diving into one thing at a time and having, say, you and I doing this podcast interview now, our email inbox is closed. We haven't got any other apps up on our computer. My phone's away from me, etc. I'll do a better job of this. And therefore, I don't have to repeat any of this. I don't have to feel bad about this.
Mm.
And then I go on to the next thing. So there's this, you probably know about the switch cost effect, but just the mental energy when you are doing a few things at once is diminishing your concentration. And they say by 23 minutes, every time you switch tasks in the middle of something, you lose 23 minutes worth of your concentration. So if you do that five
Wow.
times, it's
Yeah.
going to be 3 or 4 hours of lost concentration in any given day. So I think that the color coding's super smart, and I think the fact that we've sort of come full circle, that you're investing your time with intention in the way that you're investing your energy and your vibration with intention on any given day. So for me, that makes perfect sense that you do that, because that's embodying kind of the identity and the way that you want to show up and lead yourself across your day and your week. So it's really helpful. Thank you.
Pleasure. And I could be wrong, but I feel like you would be similar based off the very short time that we've been connected. But one of the biggest shifts out of doing the scheduling thing for myself
Yes.
was when I was doing nothing to do with work
Hmm.
before, I wasn't I wasn't really there.
You
And
felt
so
guilty about
even for
it.
example, yeah, so next week we've got to do a little bit of travel and
Mhm.
most of it's just downtime. In
Yes.
the past, I would come back from a trip and be disappointed that I didn't relax and didn't do it, but I would also be disappointed that I didn't really get much work done. Whereas
Right.
now, if I've said that between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m., I'm hanging out with my fiance and I'm not doing anything with work. When I'm doing
Yes.
that, there's not one bit
You're
of
all
guilt
in.
because everything else has been accounted for. And
Yeah.
that's what I said I was going to do.
Yeah.
And so it's allowed me to actually switch off, properly switch off now, which I
Yeah.
didn't used to be able to do in the past.
Yeah. That's a huge gift because the things that you used to be worried about are scheduled somewhere. It's not at that time, but
Mm,
they are somewhere, and it's, yeah, they will be taken care of. I can't believe it. I've never heard this quote before. I only heard it last week. You shouldn't worry about a due date. You should worry about a due date. So the idea is that you've got your
mm,
due dates in your calendar. You know when something's due or when you need to have something done by. Often we stress about that. Oh my God, that date's coming. It feels like a freight train coming towards us. You feel that sense of chaos and your cortisol's high. But if you've blocked out times in the way that you say you do in your calendar to do the work that needs to be
mhm.
ready by that due date, all the pressure's off because,
Yeah.
that's scheduled. And then when you are watching TV or, you're doing things that you may have otherwise felt guilty about doing, it's just completely released. So yeah, what a gift. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing that. I think I know the audience will gain. It's a hack, but yeah, I think we need a better word than hack for that one. That's going to be game
Yeah, we do.
changing.
Yeah. My pleasure.
Yeah. All right, Danny. Well, I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you for all of that wisdom that you've shared with our audience. Just before you go, I want to give you the opportunity to let people know where they can connect with you and find out more about your excellent work.
Thank you. I would just say the Fitness and Lifestyle podcast is probably the best place to go. Obviously, I'm kind of posting across a number of different platforms. Fitness and Lifestyle podcast or Instagram are probably the two most consistent ones, and you'll find everything else from there. But yeah, I just appreciate you having me on. It was a really good conversation. Like I said to you in the chat, in our conversation just then, your skill set of having a conversation like this is really, really good. So if you hadn't have told me that you just started the podcast, I would not have
We don't know.
known. So
So
congrats on launching the show, and I'm excited to keep up with it and see where it's at in another 12 months or 24 months time. But yeah, appreciate you having me on. I really enjoyed the chat, and hopefully the listeners have gained some value and enjoyed it.
they absolutely will have. I can say that with confidence. And yeah, huge thank you to you too, Danny. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Habit Nerd. I hope you found some new inspiration, learned something new, or gained a fresh perspective. If you did enjoy the episode, I would be really grateful if you could please leave a 5-star review, as it helps the show get in the ears of new listeners, plus it should only take you 5 seconds. If you're keen for more tips and insights, then head over to Instagram and follow Habit Nerd.